Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rare Petro Network. Today we've got, it's been a while, but another episode of the Industry Leader Spotlight Series. Today I am joined by Mr. Neel Duncan. Welcome to the show, Neel. Good to have you.
Good to see you, Travis.
Now, Neel Duncan is a senior project development and asset manager executive at Integrated Petroleum Technologies, or IPT. Between working for large E&P companies like ExxonMobil, international organizations like Gazprom, consulting for independent oil producers, and merging companies across diverse borders, Mr. Duncan has worked dozens of disciplines within the industry. His expertise has landed him positions in not only the United States, but Russia, Turkmenistan, and islands in the Pacific Southwest. As managing director at IPT, Neel provides technical and strategic advice in the upstream, midstream, and mining sectors, and today we are going to pick his brain to see what kind of information we can glean. So, first of all, like we start with everybody, there's an origin story. How did you get involved with the energy industry? Did you stumble into it? Did you always want to as a kid? How'd that start?
Well, I grew up in the energy industry. My stepfather was a petroleum geologist and an independent oil and gas producer in the San Juan Basin. So growing up, in high school, I was going down to the wells with him. I was doing some mud logging and that sort of thing. And it was just kind of a natural direction for me. So after high school, I went straight to Texas Tech University and got my petroleum engineering degree.
Alrighty, and that's what kicked it off. So obviously that's a start, but this is not just Joe Schmo Spotlight Series. This is Industry Leader. So where do you think you kind of breached into a leadership role or got involved with maybe a leadership opportunity?
Well, starting out, you always do the engineer role and work your way up. And what I always try to do is try to find something unique in a field, find something that needed attention, put that attention and focus on it, and try to increase production or cut cost. And so I was successful doing that with Mobil, which was my first job out of Texas Tech. And I graduated at a very difficult time in the industry. There were 14 of 75 who got jobs, so I was fortunate to have a job. My grades were not stellar, but I did get some experience along the way. Like I said, working for my stepfather and also working as a pumper in Lubbock, Texas when I was going to college. So I got into the industry, worked my way up, and when I went back after breaking my pick with Mobil and going back to work for my stepfather, that's when I was, got into the business a little bit and started learning the real economics of business and what it meant to have debts to pay and that sort of thing. So, after we sold out, that's when I went to Russia and started taking increasing leadership roles there in organizations.
Time in Russia, I mean, Igavarice Paruski, or did I butcher that?
Yeah, Gavaru Paruski.
Personally, I don't speak any. I did Google that before this for my notes, so please,
okay.
No one think that I'm bilingual there. I do have some Spanish, but you mentioned Russia. I mean, I don't know if we've worked with anyone or interviewed anyone on this show that actually had such a, drastic transition into a different country. Of course, people are operating in some pretty typical places, but we have not interviewed any Americans who worked in Russia. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it was a unique opportunity. I was still not yet 30 when I jumped on the plane and flew to Moscow. But it was it taught me how to be resourceful, because in Russia they didn't have all the resources we have in the United States. And initially, the joint venture I went over there to join. The idea was to bring all this American equipment into Western Siberia and start and produce oil more efficiently. And when I got on the ground, and I was just a consultant for them. Went over there to do completions and ended up being in charge of building the production facilities, and that's kind of how it started. But I quickly realized, hey, we can't afford to do all this with Alaska North Slope equipment, we've got to find a way to do this with Russian equipment. And so I helped the company make that transition and start incorporating more and more Russian equipment, training more Russians to become engineers, so we had a really good local staff to work with, and building the business that way, and that worked in our favor.
So you mentioned there was a problem with the Russian equipment. I mean, comparatively, was it just older, or was it not as advanced as maybe some Western technology that you'd been working with?
It was not as advanced, but it was good enough for what we were doing. And I encouraged the Russian companies to reach out to API, get the inspectors into their factories, and start producing API equipment. And they started doing that. And so we were able to get API monogram wellheads and things coming out of the Urals, which was very interesting. They had to go through quite a process to get that certification, but it really improved their quality. I saw a time when Russia went from being very down and out as a people, having been under 70 years of communism, to starting to become more entrepreneurial, more free thinking, and really saw an explosion in technology there that was uniquely Russian. So that helped build. It helped build Russia a little bit, and being part of that, I was asked to join another joint venture with Gazprom and some Western investors to develop an oil field in the Osterhahn region. We did some exploration and got the oil field evaluated, and I moved back and went and joined our original Russian partners from the first joint venture, and then we formed TNK-BP with British Petroleum, and I became a senior manager in that, looking after the gas business.
Were you 30 at that point by the time you helped with that merger?
No, I spent 15 years in Russia.
Okay, so I didn't know what the time frame for this was. I was going to say, that is such a quick climb up that ladder. But what were some of the ways you were able to present your ideas and get buy-in from the people you were working with to get those changes? Because honestly, negotiations are something that you don't get to talk about a lot in school. How did you navigate that internationally?
Well, it wasn't easy, but what I did learn to do was listen and listen to ideas. People, would come in with their own ideas and just be very forceful about them. I found that's not the way to do it. These Russians have, they've come a long way. I got to see them come a long way, and I said, let's roll with it. Let's, let some of the Russian thinking come into this business, and they were, if you listened, they were pretty astute business people, and became astute. I worked with a lot of Russian guys who had Harvard MBAs, and they came to the U.S. They went to Harvard. They went to London School of Economics. They went through these very good programs and came back with very good education in business. And the engineers were going to the Gubkin Institute, and there was a technology university in Tumen also that Schlumberger and BP participated in and helped grow. So, you had these young engineers coming out with very good education from the Russian Institute. So, if you go to some of the SPE programs in Russia, you'll find really impressive papers coming from very, very young engineers with, novel approaches to frac modeling and that sort of thing. They're very sharp.
Yeah, and it's got to be fun to look back and think about your influence in the region over that time. So that pretty much carries us. I mean, granted, there's a whole lot more, but jumping into the present, what do you do today? A lot of what you've been doing for the past couple decades, or is it new? Is it changing?
Well, things have changed a lot since I came back to the United States. I mean, I came back, well, after a short term in Papua New Guinea,
Mhm.
where I used my cost cutting skills and, using the nationals, developing the nationals to did that again from 2009 to 2013. But then in 2014, I joined IPT, and just to do the consulting here in the DJ Basin. And what I found when I first came into this role is that, having been international for so long, I had learned the importance of long-term planning, and looking out well beyond the traditional planning cycle that's run here in the DJ, where you've got a well spudding in a month, and now you're thinking about a drilling contract, right? So we started expanding that time a little bit, and to start thinking ahead a lot more, because if you do plan ahead, you find more opportunities for cost cutting, more synergies. You can get a wider selection of vendors. We were able to do a lot to reduce our clients' cost and improve performance by looking ahead a little bit longer than we normally do.
And definitely for you listening to this podcast out there, if you'd like to learn more about what IPT can provide, we direct you to iptenergyservices.com. I'll make sure to include a link right here, but please go to them. They do wonderful work. So now we've gotten through the timeline, sort of what you're doing up until now. And now I'd like to switch from you, kind of gear towards the current downturn. So how does this one compare to ones you've seen in the past? And maybe do you remember your first downturn?
This is the mother of all downturns.
Oh, I'd love to hear it as a young energy professional.
That is, I started in a similar downturn, but I was very fortunate to be a young engineer who had just started with a company that didn't want to get rid of the young engineers.
Oh, I feel that. Count your blessings.
So, I had a lot of friends and colleagues that were dealing with withdrawn offers, as many young engineers are doing today.
Yeah.
So it was a discouraging time, but then we had a pretty good run once we got through that. I think there are some differences now versus then. Now we see the emergence of competitive fuels. We see a lot of anti-oil and gas sentiment out there, and that's going to make it tough on our industry for a while. I think as a young person comes into this industry, being oil and gas, I think we need to think of ourselves more as energy specialists and not oil and gas specialists. Yeah. I think we have to pivot, and we have to adapt a little bit to how can our skills be used to benefit other forms of energy as well. For example, IPT is looking into geothermal now. We've been working with NREL for several years and advising on how to cut drilling costs in geothermal. We haven't gotten a lot of traction yet, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to use what we've learned in oil and gas to make geothermal a lot better and cheaper. Mm-hmm. When I was rotating back and forth to Papua New Guinea, I went to Arapahoe Community College and took some courses in solar engineering and solar installation. So, try to diversify so that you can speak to other forms of energy and talk intelligently about them, understand where oil and gas fits in the changing energy puzzle, and try to provide value in that discussion or in business that develops from that.
That kind of brings us to the next question, actually. What are you and your businesses doing to try and navigate this water? Clearly, you said you're trying to get into geothermal stuff, but I liked how you framed it as become an energy specialist, right? It's always changing. The energy puzzle, it's going to be dynamic. So is this something that we're going to see, that individuals should strive to make themselves energy specialists, or should companies start an initiative to become an energy specialist, like, say, IPT or BP, even though that's not been working out so well for them?
Well, it's not working out. So we say it's not working out so well for BP, but we don't know the answer yet. We know that, their stock price is not
Great, not great.
not great. It's probably the lowest it's been in 25 years.
Yep.
But not to hammer on that, anybody that's going to make any kind of a change is going to have some pain along the way.
Of course, got to take risk.
You can't just, the leopard just can't get rid of its spots, overnight. Mm-hmm. That's true. But in as far as adapting, I think, we have to be ready to pivot as an industry. It's not going to be fast. I think we're kidding ourselves to be carbon neutral in Colorado by 2035. It's
a bit aggressive for sure.
That's pretty aggressive, and it's frankly, it's probably not going to happen. The technology today and the limits of physics don't really support it. One of my favorite people I follow, and I've met him, I had dinner with him several years ago, is a guy named Mark Mills, and he's a really good energy thinker, and I encourage you to look up his videos, read his books. He's very good. But back to what IPT is doing. IPT recognizes that we have to focus on what's going to change in our clients' businesses, and in order to cut costs, our clients may not have full-time positions for every engineering discipline. Mm-hmm. For example, and I think as PETRO is doing with some clients in California, providing that artificial lift service where you can go look, pull the data from the company, look at what's going on with their well performance, and go back and recommend some solutions, maybe execute some work, improves the bottom line without them having the cost of a full-time engineering staff doing that. You can come do that a few hours a week, as Anthony has said, and I think those kinds of models work. We work with clients all the time that have problems like needing expert testimony and that sort of thing, and we come in and provide that. We have the capability, we have the analytical, we have the data, we have the servers, the way to process data, and can go out and provide a lot of data services to people. So in kind of rebranding IPT, whereas most of our business was always supervision of frac jobs, supervision of drilling rigs, supervision of completion and workover operations, we are becoming more and more of an engineering and data company, data services company. So we'll be hosting a data room for an acquisition soon. Those kinds of things where it's data, it's working with data, but what you have to remember is that big data needs also big minds to work with it and to understand it and to know how to apply it. And I think companies like IPT and Rare Petro are unique in that, is that we don't just amalgamate a bunch of data and churn out a bunch of garbage. We think about it and understand the implications and create value from that data for our clients.
100%. If I'm not mistaken, it sounds like you're describing a future where really energy professionals, maybe not just petroleum engineer, but energy specialists, have the context necessary to arrange this data and present it in a way that, like you said, adds value to somebody else. We're moving into sort of a digital oil field, if you will.
It is, but remember, the digital oil field is, we've been talking about this for a long time, but you still need boots on the ground.
Yep.
people with brilliant minds to go out and execute, and getting things done on the ground is where the rubber meets the road.
Definitely. And we've kind of dipped our toes into it a little bit, but what things do you think will come out of this downturn? How will the industry change? How will people change? How will the industry internationally change from a perspective of US versus Russia, maybe?
Well, I think overall, I think things will change. I mean, the travel. I mean, I was just on the groundwater protection conference this morning, and was talking to various state agencies about how they're running their UIC programs now. And you know, in New Mexico, I used to go into the office in Santa Fe there, and these guys had stacks of paper all over their desks. There were there were boxes of archives, and I'd go in and I asked about a permit that I was working on for a client, and he'd say, oh, it's in this box, and he'd pull out all this paper. They've been working from home since March, and they're completely paperless now. They've adapted their systems, and now they can find stuff. They seem to be working more efficiently. You know, where they used to process 40 permits a year, now they're processing almost 400. But they're able to do things much more efficiently. And you know, I think that's going to be true. Meetings are. There will be more meetings like this where people are remote, not necessarily traveling to each other's office. We still need to have the personal connection. We still have to meet once in a while. There's something missed on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, no, it is different. It's easier to tune out.
Yeah, it's easy and
play on your phone. No one notices.
And you know, there's more to communication than just the words and what you see on someone's face. Mm-hmm. But there's that makes the industry a little bit different already. But we will have to continue to cut costs. That goes without saying. We'll have to realize that demand may not get back to where it was very soon. But we also have to recognize that in the whole mix of energy, not everybody can afford solar and wind.
Yeah,
we have to continue to produce oil to make sure that the people of the less fortunate have access to energy. Mm-hmm. And there are still more and more people gaining access to energy all the time. And it will be the energy that we produce. It will be fossil fuels. And so fossil fuels will play a role for a long time to come. We just have to be smart about it and produce it efficiently.
This is almost a selfish question for me because I graduated from mines with a bachelor's in petroleum engineering back in May. I'm fortunate enough to have a position in the industry, but there's a lot of people like me who may have a job or most likely do not. So what kind of words of wisdom do you have for the people in that wide pool of graduates that are either in work, out of work? What can they do to make themselves more attractive as candidates? How can they add value to people's networks?
Well, you did say a word, network. You have to network. You have to go to the SPE meetings, meet people, make yourself known. But I think in this day and age, you'll have to be willing to do almost any job to really demonstrate that you have the work ethic and the staying power to want to be in this business. I'm not advocating that you die on the hill trying to be a engineer for some company. You might take a divergent path, but what I found is that anyone that's successfully navigated a petroleum engineering program through the university has a lot of skills. That can be used in something else. And if your passion is to come back to being that engineer, then so be it. But you might take a path that goes parallel for a while before you cross over.
Mhm. And then I don't know if this ties into working any job and being willing to do anything, but I did see when perusing your LinkedIn profile, you were both certified EMT and professional pilot at some point. Was that anything to do with oil and gas, or was that you just learning to grow on your own?
No, I just, I became a pilot when I was in college. I took, it was a funny story, but I started taking ground school, and I started flying my last summer when I was working for as an engineer for Amoco in Hobbs, New Mexico. Wasn't that much else to do in Hobbs besides learn a new skill. So, and I just told my flight instructor that I can't make it anymore. I'm out of money. I still got to save money for school. And then I opened my mailbox one afternoon, and there's the SPE scholarship. Oh my God, I can finish flying. I've got my license. That was a differentiator that got me the job in the first place with Mobil, because I flew down from college for my interview, and they were pretty impressed that I flew.
Uh-huh.
And later on, after I joined and became an engineer, I started getting phone calls from my boss's boss. Hey, there's a game down in we'd like to go down to. Do you want to, if we gather some guys up and split the cost, will you fly us down there? Sure.
Uh-huh.
So started getting hours that way.
Definitely. Is that still something? I mean, you're kind of higher up in the management chain. I'm sure you've kind of dealt with hiring and firing people, but do you look for those weird, obscure skills?
I do. I hired a drilling engineer that was a pilot recently, and he's actually still working for me right now. So he just finished up a project here in the DJ, and so smart kid, rancher, pilot, had pretty good ethics, and the medical skills. I was always working in remote areas and wondering what I would do and my biggest fear was someone has a major accident. How can I help? So it wasn't until 2018 I came back here, and I jumped on South Metro Fire's EMT program, got my EMT, and now I work as a volunteer firefighter in Clear Creek County, where I volunteer about 2 days a week. It's pretty cool. Drive a fire truck, pull up to the accidents, and help people, or go on medical calls and help somebody in distress. So it's a lot of fun, and it's good give back to my community.
Definitely. Well, I think that actually wraps up everything we wanted to discuss in the interview. Is there anything else you'd like to do? Maybe talk about IPT, plug anything else, or last minute advice for those listening?
Well, IPT, just to give listeners who don't know IPT, we are a golden-based consultancy that we do everything from, the pre-planning to permitting to drilling, execution, workover, completions, execution, and we also do a lot of support for people who find themselves in regulatory trouble or have serious regulatory questions or issues. We can help resolve those issues with the COGCC, and just because we've seen a lot, and we know what kind of variances are acceptable, and we just know how to work with people. So we do a lot of that. We're also experts in hydraulic fracturing. IPT helped develop the Frac Pro program way back in the days. So in fact, we have an unlimited license to Frac Pro, and that's been good. But we're always studying, what's new, what's the best way to complete wells. We really look at data hard, even when we're not on assignment for a client. We're pulling data and analyzing and saying, well, what's the best way to frack a well in this region in case we're asked. So we do a lot of that, a lot of our own research.
And again, I'll make sure to put a link to the website right here. Can't have it too much. And thank you. Lastly, thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us. And
Thank you, Travis. It's been a pleasure.
of course. And that's the end of this episode. So be sure to go to rarepetro.com to find more content, doing plenty of in-house research, writing periodicals. If you don't want to read, we do it in podcast form too. So you've got no excuse to not keep learning. So till we see you next time, take care, everybody.